Yes, thank you. So this, are you ready for this? Is a ghost story. So no self-respecting lighthouse would be without a couple of resident ghosts. It's also a story about discovery. It's a story about the little moments that come together to create an agile culture. And I'm totally going to mix my metaphors throughout this entire talk. So just be ready for that. All right, so the big green button does what I want it to do. There's our ghost. Aww, he's so sweet, right? Looks very friendly. All right, so when I was 20 years old, I got my first big girl job. And my first big girl job was at one of the best places to work in America. And I mean that literally. I worked at the scooter store, and we were on the list of the best places to work year after year after year after year. So at the scooter store, our mission was central to everything that we did. It wasn't just some pretty words on a wall. It was literally the driver and the purpose for everything we did. I worked there for 12 years, and I left about 6 years ago, and I can still tell you today that our mission was to deliver freedom and independence to people with limited mobility, right? So we delivered mobile devices to help people get around their homes when they couldn't otherwise walk. So again, our mission was central to everything. Because of that, we had a very strong sense of identity and a very strong sense of purpose. In fact, you could say that we had a very healthy and explicit culture. So just today, how many times have we heard this word, right? We use this word all the time. And so, and it has a lot of baggage with it too. Good baggage, bad baggage, might be Prada, might be something you bought at Walmart, but it's baggage. And so I want to put a definition around it because I'm going to talk about culture a lot today. So for the purposes of my talk, culture is the habits, traditions, and behaviors of people and groups in an organization. So a couple of those words are key: habits, traditions, and behaviors. Okay? So now we're on the same page about what that means when we throw around the word culture, at least in the next 15 minutes and 35 seconds. So unless this is your first Agile conference, you have probably heard the analogy of the culture iceberg, right? So the top of the iceberg is what we see every day, right? These are strategies, these are tactics. These are things like pool tables and ping pong tables at the office and unlimited vacation, you know, and these are good things. These are things that we talk about, right? But then below the waterline, you have your habits, your traditions, and your behaviors. So this is where the real culture is, right? This is who gets promoted. This is what people talk about at the water cooler. This is the ideas that we celebrate, or the ideas that we kind of smush down and try not to talk about. So this is where the ghosts lie, right? These are the things that can get us. And when we talk about changing organizational culture as being a barrier to being agile and to agility success, we can see why this is such a big deal, right? Because you hit it before you even see it coming. And so one of the ways in which we can kind of, one of the ways in which we can get around this, we can miss the iceberg if we're on the Titanic, is to lower the waterline, right? So if these are the traditions, habits, and behaviors, bringing that waterline lower and actually seeing those things and talking about them and making them part of our everyday language. All right, iceberg, get out of my way. So not too long ago, I was working with a small company based in San Francisco. They were a remote company. And they were really growing. They were having a lot of success and growth at that point. And I was working with their software team and their IT department, like your typical Agile coach, helping them implement Agile practices and principles. The executive team came to me and said, hey, we'd really like your help in developing a growth strategy. We want to grow the IT department to support this booming business, right? And funny thing is, the question gave me pause. I stopped for a minute because here's the thing. Their business was growing really, really rapidly, But while it was, they were really struggling to see how they could scale. They were really struggling to see how they could maintain their culture, right? They had this really tight-knit group, and the bigger that they got, the more they weren't sure how they were going to stay who they are. And so it gave me pause, because now you want to grow, but you don't really know how you're going to keep all the great things together. There were a couple other red flags as well. I won't read these to you, but these are probably pretty typical. If you read these, you probably have experienced some of these yourself. So these were some other icebergs that when they come to me and they want to, how many developers should we add, and when should we add them, and who should we get? They're really excited about growing. But there are all these other things that are going on, right? They were encountering some bumps in their Agile journey because they had some misaligned expectations and some unexpressed ideas. So I was visited here by our first ghost. This is a friendly ghost. She's smiling, don't judge. So this is the ghost of beloved company past. I love it. So I'm visited by the ghost of beloved company past. I was thinking so much about the scooter store, and I was thinking about how everything we did was just so centered around this mission, right? Our department goals, our company goals were all derived from our mission. There was so much just clarity. There was alignment. There was direction and purpose. I mean, you were excited to be there because you knew that you were changing lives, right? And so when it came to decision making, it was pretty simple. You came back to the mission and you said, does this serve our mission, right? And so as I started to think about the company that I was working with, I thought, gosh, the ghost of beloved company past is telling me that we can't start with a growth strategy, right? We have to know who we are, who we want to be, before we can decide how we're going to grow and who we're going to ask to grow with us, right? So I sat down with the top 4 leaders of the company, and I pitched an idea. I also kept hitting people with my laser. Could we undertake a process to develop our mission statement, our vision for the company, and our values? So they already had a mission statement on the website, right? It was like this long. And literally the only person I asked in the company who knew it was the very sweet lady in marketing who wrote it 5 years ago. It was a marketing slogan, a very, very nice one. Sounded really, really good and really comfy, but nobody else knew it. It wasn't this unifying rally cry. It wasn't going to tell us anything about who we should hire or how we should grow. And so I asked these leaders, would they be willing to go through this process with me? And they were amazing. They were absolutely up for it. And so off we went. However, we had to talk a bit about what it was going to mean before we undertook it. So mission, vision, values can be the foundation of your culture. It's not all of your culture. It's not the only thing. But the process of going through developing it reveals who you want to be and who you are currently. It also can give you some downstream benefits, right? Then you can use that to develop your department product goals, your individual roles and goals. And that actually leads to more agility. It leads to autonomy and mastery and purpose because you have direction. And everyone trusts that you're going in the same direction. So the process itself, as I said, it really does create clarity and alignment. It communicates purpose, direction, expected behaviors, not only to your employees, but even to the outside world, right? Keeps us on the right path, even when there are distractions, because Lord knows there are so many cool things out there to build or to deliver or to serve people with if you're in service. And so what's your true north, or what's your lighthouse, if you will? What's going to keep you going in the right direction and keep everyone together? It also unifies our identity. That was one of the first things that I mentioned earlier, right? When I was talking about the scooter store was we had a very strong sense of identity. And it gives us a common language. So when we are in the room and we're having these discussions about decisions we need to make, we have something to come back to. The other thing I want to say is that mission, vision, values are not the brand. They do inform the brand, but they are not your brand. They are not a marketing slogan. I'm not talking about these things that we put on a nice gold plaque and we put it on the wall and then we walk away from it. We never talk about it again. I'm talking about a living, breathing document or a living, breathing rally cry that can even change in time if you need it to. But it's the thing, it's the core, right? So let me talk a little bit about some concrete steps. We're going to get into kind of practicality, and then I'll come back and tell you about how it went with that company. So your mission is your purpose. The questions that we used were, who are we? What do we do? And for whom? It is really that simple. At the end of the day, it is that simple. It needs to be kind of short, concise, inspiring. If it's not inspiring, it's going to be on the wall. That's the end of the story, right? Relatable. It communicates the organization's just reason for being, all right? So employees should be able to connect the mission to their own daily job so that it can help them make decisions. And then, of course, it serves as a lighthouse for decision making. I get a lot of questions, because I talk about this all the time. This is my passion. I get a lot of questions about the difference between mission and vision. And so your mission is who you are, what you do, and for whom. Your vision is your long-term vision for the company. My favorite question to ask is, how are we going to change the world? How is the world going to be different when your company is gone? Hopefully that's not for a long time, but how is it going to be different? Very similar in how you craft the language. So, it needs to be concise, inspiring, same things. But it does kind of combine your mission with your values to come up with this inspirational long-term view. And then your values are behaviors. How do we behave with one another? Particularly in support of our mission and our vision, what are the things that are important in the way that we interact? In our exchanges. I loved that, What are our rich and sweet spot exchanges? So that's your values. These are important because they will then be part of your overall hiring and performance assessment. So it is really important that this language in particular are things that you are willing to stand up for and things that you are willing to hang on to when times are rough. But how do you do that, right? I mean, every group that I have sat down with to kind of draft mission, the first draft is this long. Because how do you whittle it down, And then how do you make sure that you're incorporating employee voice? I was just laughing as all the other speakers in my session were talking because I was like, oh, me too. So how do you go through that process and do it in the right way where employees are bought in and engaged, but also so are the leaders? So this is where we meet our next set of ghosts. As we started to undertake this process, we were visited by the ghost of garage past and the ghost of growing assumptions future. So when I sat down with these 4 leaders, these people had worked together since their early 20s. They had grown this company together, the 4 of them, and I'll even add, actually, 2 of them were husband and wife. And yet, they had begun to have different experiences in the company, right? As the company grew, they're not sitting in the garage anymore. They're not having these daily conversations or even hourly or minutely conversations because they were sitting next to each other in the garage. So as we started to have these discussions about mission, vision, and values, it became really clear that their paths had actually begun to diverge a bit. That they actually had, in some ways, slightly different visions and in some ways largely different visions about where they were going in the company. Sometimes it was just semantics. It was, oh, should we use the word agility or the word adaptability? But sometimes it was, what products are we going to have in 3 years, right? Because these weren't conversations that they were having every single day. Now, I do want to point out, for those of you who may decide to undertake this, that this misalignment can be very, very uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. I mean, imagine especially that you're sitting there with your husband, who's also the co-CEO of the company, and he just has drastically different ideas, right? And it's not so much that you have different ideas, it's that you are just realizing that you haven't talked about it. Oh, wow. Like, how did we get here? And so I just continually encouraged them and told them that it's uncomfortable, but my goodness, like, I'm glad we're having these discussions now, right? And so our lovely ghosts, thank you for visiting us. I should point out, they are not friendly nor foe. They didn't, there was no spooking, but they came up. So our process for defining mission, vision, values. So first we sent out a company-wide survey, and we actually just posed those 3 questions, right? So for mission, it was who are we, what are we doing for whom? For vision, it was how are we going to change the world? And for values, it was how do we need to behave with one another in order to support our mission and our vision? Got the company-wide survey back, and then I walked through a series of guided discussions with those leaders that I mentioned. And want to point out, I actually did not share the survey results with them until we had had our first discussion, because I wanted to ask them those questions and see what they came up with. Interestingly, for mission and vision, they were very, very all over the map, as you could already kind of tell from some of the things I've told you. For values, they were incredibly aligned, not only with each other, but with the entire company. So that was really encouraging to me, because I feel like the inverse would have actually been a lot harder to reverse or to deal with. So our values were good. We just need to figure out where we were going with those values. So we had a series of guided discussions, probably about 6, where we had a good week or 2 in between to contemplate, to think about what we discussed, and for them to have some conversations as well. We started drafting some things. We sent the drafts first to kind of middle management, then we worked on them some more, and then we sent them to the entire company. And we got feedback on those drafts, and then magic. So then we roll it out. So I mentioned this is a remote company, so every employee got kind of a care package that included a t-shirt with the mission on it, it included a poster to put on their wall, and a couple other just little swag type of things that all had the mission, vision, values on them. Then each manager either got together with their team if they were close enough to do it physically, or they had a video chat where they all opened their packages at the same time on video. So that was really fun. We got some cool pictures out of that. And had some really good discussions about what does this mean for our team? What does this mean for you individually as a contributor in the company? And how does it affect you? It also demonstrated buy-in from the managers and from the leaders, and that was really important. And then we just started talking about next steps. So it was going to affect our performance assessments. It was going to affect how we make product decisions. And so we really wanted to get across that this wasn't, again, keep saying it, but we're not just going to put it on the wall and forget about it. Rolling out is nice. You can tell I'm starting to speed up. I have 1 minute. Rolling out is nice, but when the rubber meets the road, is our behavior going to change? That's what was really important. So when things got crazy, we used that knowledge, right? Now we have discovered some of these unexpressed expectations. So now we can kind of reel them in when things get crazy. These were some of those icebergs. I don't have time to actually talk about them, but needless to say, there was definitely some more alignment, which caused some of those icebergs to melt. So parting thoughts, culture is traditions, habits, and behaviors. MVV is a tool to lower the waterline. It's not a silver bullet. I want to say that too. It's not a silver bullet, but it's the process, and it's the conversations that you're going to have and that you should continue to have from that point on. Some cool books, and thank you.